Have you ever felt that worry overwhelms you, as if you were bearing the weight of the world on your shoulders? That sense of uncertainty that robs you of your peace and leaves you gasping for air can be overpowering, even paralyzing. But what if I told you there's a way to free yourself from that burden and imagine living with unshakable confidence? A life where anxiety and doubt hold no power. Are you ready to learn how to achieve it? Your peace of mind and well-being are just a step away. Don't allow fear to stop you any longer. In this video, I invite you to discover a path to true inner tranquility. Are you tired of being trapped in constant worry? It's time to stop struggling alone and begin trusting in God, who has a perfect plan for your life. Explore the transforming power of faith and how to rest in the promise that you are not alone on this journey. Are you ready to release your heart from fear and embrace the security only faith can provide? Don't miss this. It's time to let go. I invite you to do something special. Take a moment and declare your trust in God. Write in the comments, "God, I trust you." By doing this, you'll take a courageous step, recognizing that you're not facing this path alone and that God is already working powerfully in your life. Experience how your faith grows. Let's share this now and unite our voices in affirmation. Matthew 6:34 teaches us that worrying about the future is not only unnecessary but harmful. Jesus invites us to focus on the present, reminding us that each day has its own struggles. By trusting God, we can release the weight of future concerns, knowing that He is in control and will always meet our daily needs. When we pause to meditate on Jesus' words, we uncover a powerful lesson that challenges our natural tendency to worry about tomorrow. In a world where uncertainty reigns and anxieties about the future endlessly haunt us, Jesus offers us a perspective that encourages us to relinquish that burden and trust in something greater. He presents a simple but profoundly effective remedy: living in the present. Each day brings its own challenges, and adding tomorrow's worries only burdens us and steals our peace. The message of Jesus is clear. Worrying about the future is not only pointless, but Philippians 4:6-7, in his letter to the Philippians, the Apostle Paul instructs us not to be anxious about anything. Instead, in every situation, through prayer and petition, present your requests to God with thanksgiving, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Paul invites us to release the illusion of control we think we have over our circumstances and trust God fully. Paul begins by saying, "Don't worry about anything." In a world where anxiety feels almost automatic, this command may seem daunting. How can we not worry when so much is at stake? The answer lies in trust. When we choose not to worry, we're taking an act of faith. We're declaring our belief in a God who is greater than any challenge we face. At its core, worry is an attempt to control the uncontrollable. We worry because we want to ensure everything goes right, but we forget there are many things beyond our control. By choosing not to worry, we are saying, "God, I trust you are in control." The next step Paul mentions is to bring all our anxieties to God in prayer. On every occasion, through prayer and petition, present your requests to God with thanksgiving. Prayer is a conversation with God, a time to open our hearts and share our worries, fears, and desires. But beyond merely asking, Paul encourages us to do so with gratitude. Gratitude serves as a reminder of all that God has already done for us. When we thank Him, we remember His faithfulness in the past, which strengthens our faith in His future provision. By blending prayer with gratitude, our focus shifts. We no longer see just our problems, but also the blessings, bringing us to a state of peace. Finally, Paul offers a promise. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. This peace isn't just any peace, it's a peace that transcends our understanding. It's a peace not dependent on external circumstances, but on a deep trust in God. This peace acts as a protector of our hearts and minds, shielding us from anxiety and fear. It's not that problems vanish, but that in the midst of them, we experience an inexplicable calm. It's the certainty that no matter what happens, God is with us and in control. How can we apply this powerful message to our lives? Start by identifying areas of your life that cause anxiety, whether work, health, relationships, or the future. Then, bring these concerns to God in prayer. Be open and honest in your prayers, but also remember to express gratitude for what He has already done. As you practice this, you'll begin to notice a shift. Problems may not disappear immediately, but you'll experience inner peace that enables you to face them with a new perspective. This peace comes from knowing you are not alone. The God of the universe is with you, taking care of you and your circumstances. Philippians 4:6-7 is more than a verse to memorize. It's a guide to living a worry-free life. Whenever anxiety starts to take hold, recall these words. Make prayer and gratitude a regular part of your day. Trust in God and allow His peace to fill your heart. I invite you to continue to explore these transformative teachings. Subscribe to our channel and join us on this journey of faith, hope, and wisdom. You'll not only receive content that will enrich your life, but you'll also become part of a community that seeks to grow and walk with God. We all face moments in life when worries seem to overwhelm us. Anxiety can take many forms: fear of the future, work stress, relational tensions, or financial insecurity. These burdens can feel unbearable, as if we are carrying the weight of the world. But in the midst of these struggles, there's a verse in Scripture that offers a powerful and liberating solution. 1 Peter 5-7. The Apostle Peter tells us, "Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you." Though brief, this message is profound and transformative. Peter invites us to release our worries and trust in God, who is willing and able to bear our burdens. The first challenge we face when anxious is our tendency to think that if we care enough, we can prevent bad things from happening. But the truth is, worry doesn't give us control, it robs us of peace. Peter urges us to cast our anxieties on God. This word, cast, implies a deliberate act of letting go, of releasing something heavy. Imagine carrying a backpack full of stones. Each worry, each fear is another stone added to the load. Instead of continuing to add stones, you choose to unload them, handing them over to someone who can bear them better than you. That's what Peter asks us to do with our anxieties: surrender them to God. The second part of the verse is key, because He cares for you. This is not just an act of surrender, but an act of trust. Peter reminds us that God is not indifferent to our struggles. He doesn't just bear our burdens, He does so because He cares deeply for us. Often, anxiety arises from feeling alone in our struggles, as though everything depends on us. But this verse assures us we are not alone. The God who created the universe is deeply involved in our lives, concerned with every detail, ready to walk beside us in every difficulty. Living this teaching daily begins with a shift in perspective. When you face a situation that causes worry, instead of letting anxiety control you, take a moment to pause and reflect on 1 Peter 5-7. Then pray a prayer where you surrender that specific concern to God. For example, if you're worried about a financial issue, instead of letting anxiety overwhelm you, say, "Lord, I surrender this situation into your hands. I know you care for me and trust that you will provide for my needs." This simple act of surrender can bring immediate peace because you're no longer carrying that weight. Another way to apply this verse is to remember that we're not meant to face life alone. Part of casting our anxieties on God may involve sharing our burdens with fellow believers. Talking to someone you trust, asking for prayer, and seeking advice can be a powerful way to experience God's care through community. The promise of 1 Peter 5-7 is not that all our problems will vanish immediately, but that we don't have to carry the burden of anxiety alone. By trusting God and casting our anxieties on Him, we experience a peace that surpasses circumstances. It is a peace that comes from recognizing that the God who loves us is in control and that His care is ever present. For us, it is constant and faithful. This verse is more than a truth to read. It is a daily practice that can transform our lives. When you find yourself anxious, remind yourself that you are not alone in this struggle. God invites you to release that weight, to trust in His love and care, and to live a life marked by peace and serenity. Psalm 55-22 tells us, "Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken." Though brief, this passage holds a profound lesson that can change the way we face challenges. The psalmist begins with an invitation, "Cast your burden on the Lord." We all carry burdens in our lives. Sometimes they are visible, such as an illness or financial crisis, and other times they are internal, such as stress, anxiety, or sorrow. The invitation here is liberating. You don't have to carry these burdens alone. Casting our burdens on the Lord means acknowledging that some things in life are beyond our control and that we don't need to bear that weight by ourselves. It's an act of humility and trust where we say, "God, this situation is too much for me. I give it to you." This act of surrender not only lightens the load on our shoulders, but also allows us to experience the peace that comes from knowing God is in control. The second part of the verse carries a powerful promise. He will sustain you. God does not simply take our burdens. He promises to support us through them. This means that even if our circumstances do not change immediately, God will provide the strength and sustenance we need to endure. This promise reminds us that God does not leave us to face struggles alone. Sometimes the solution is not that our situation changes, but that we are strengthened to endure it. God promises to provide the emotional, physical, and spiritual support we need to stand firm, even in the toughest times. The verse concludes with a guarantee, "He will not let the righteous fall forever." Here we find an affirmation of God's faithfulness. Even if we stumble or go through hardships, God will not allow us to remain in that state indefinitely. His justice and love will lift us up. This hopeful promise assures us that despite the challenges, we are not destined for defeat. God is committed to lifting us, restoring us, and guiding us to a place of stability and peace. How can we live out this teaching in our daily lives? First, let's identify our burdens. It can be helpful to take time to reflect on what is troubling or overwhelming us. Once we have identified them, we can deliberately surrender them to God. This act of surrender can be as simple as saying, "Lord, I surrender this situation to you. I trust that you will handle it better than I can." It's also important to remember this promise when facing difficulties. On a challenging day, we can remind ourselves, "God will sustain me. I am not alone in this." This constant reminder can shift our perspective and give us the strength we need to move forward. When we learn to cast our burdens on the Lord, we begin to experience a peace that does not come from the absence of problems, but from the continual presence of God in our lives. We live with the confidence that even though the path may be difficult, we are not walking alone. This peace is liberating. It allows us to face challenges with a renewed perspective, knowing God is on our side, ready to sustain us and lift us up. It is a peace that enables us to sleep soundly, knowing that our burdens are in the safest hands. Psalm 55-22 is not just a verse to read, it's a truth to live by. In a world full of worries and challenges, this verse invites us to a life of trust, where our burdens do not drag us down, but bring us closer to God. Every time you feel burdened, remember this promise and choose to give your burdens to God. He is faithful to sustain you and never let you fall. Stay alert and keep listening for the next verse, which holds another powerful lesson for your life. The words of Jesus in John 14:27 offer a balm for our souls. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. The peace that Jesus offers us is not like the world's peace. It is fundamentally different from the peace the world attempts to offer. The world's peace is often conditioned by external circumstances. It is a fragile peace that depends on the absence of conflict, on succeeding in acquiring material possessions, or on maintaining well-being. But we all know how fleeting this sense of peace can be. It takes only one problem to make tranquility vanish and let fear and anxiety take over. The peace that Jesus promises, however, is radically different. It does not depend on what is happening around us, but on something much deeper and more constant: His presence in our lives. It is a peace that dwells in the heart and remains unaffected by life's storms because it is anchored in an eternal reality. For many, the idea of having peace in the midst of difficulty might seem like an unattainable ideal. Yet, it is precisely in those moments that the peace of Christ becomes more tangible and real. Jesus does not promise a life without problems, but He assures us that even in the midst of them we can experience a serenity beyond understanding. How can we access this peace? Here are some practical steps. Trust in God. The first step is to trust that God is in control, even when everything seems out of control. This trust is not passive but active. It is choosing repeatedly to believe that God is faithful to His promises. Prayer and meditation. Spending time in prayer and meditating on God's Word aligns us with His will and helps us experience His presence. Prayer doesn't immediately change circumstances, but it does change our hearts and perspectives, letting go of control. Often our lack of peace stems from our desire to control everything. Learning to let go of what we cannot change and placing it in God's hands is key to experiencing the peace He offers. Keeping in mind God's promises, such as those found in John 14:27, helps us face challenges with hope and calm. The peace of Christ not only comforts us but also transforms us. It empowers us to be agents of peace in a world that desperately needs it. When we live from this place of inner peace, our words and actions reflect that serenity, making us a source of blessing to others. John 14:27 is not just a verse of consolation. It is a call to live differently. It is an invitation to stop seeking peace in temporary things and to instead find it in the one who is eternal. In a world full of noise and chaos, the peace of Christ is the anchor that keeps us grounded, the refuge that shields us, and the light that guides our way. We live in a time when stress, anxiety, and worry seem to be constant companions of our daily lives. Economic struggles, uncertainty about the future, personal relationships, and work pressures can push us to the brink of hopelessness. Proverbs 12:25 resonates with a truth we need to remember. Anxiety in a man's heart weighs it down, but a good word makes it glad. This verse, though simple, contains a profound and powerful lesson that can change how we live and interact with others. Our words hold the power to heal or to harm, to uplift or to tear down. But how can we apply this teaching in our lives? We've all experienced that heavy feeling in our hearts, that knot in our stomachs that keeps us from thinking clearly or enjoying life. Anxiety, according to this proverb, has the ability to overwhelm us, making us feel isolated in our struggles with no way out. This feeling can be so powerful that it affects not just our mental health, but our physical well-being. It's in these moments of distress that words take on special significance. A kind word, an encouraging comment, or a gesture of support can make the difference between sinking deeper into despair or finding the strength to move forward. Proverbs 12:25 teaches us that a good word has the power to bring joy to the heart. But what exactly does a good word mean? It's not simply saying something positive or encouraging without thought. It's about being intentional with our words, speaking from the heart, with empathy. A good word is one that shows understanding, acknowledges the other person's feelings, and offers hope. It's a word that doesn't minimize pain but reminds the person they are not alone and that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. It's easy to read a proverb and agree with it, but applying it in daily life requires effort and awareness. Here are some steps to integrate this teaching. Before offering words of encouragement, it's important to listen. Often, people don't need us to tell them what to do, but simply someone who will listen, and understand them. Practicing active listening is the first step to knowing which words will be most helpful and uplifting when you speak. When you do speak, do so with empathy. Put yourself in the other's shoes. This will help you choose words that can genuinely lift their spirits and offer comfort. God's mercy is not merely a one-time act, but a constant in our lives. It is His love and compassion expressed daily, even when we don't deserve it. Living with God's mercy before our eyes means keeping it always present in our hearts and minds. It means allowing His love and compassion to shape how we view the world and interact with others. When we truly understand and value God's mercy, we are inspired to live in a way that reflects that same mercy in our relationships, decisions, and in every aspect of our lives. It involves living a life of integrity, where our actions align with divine truth. But what does it truly mean to walk in truth? To walk in truth is more than simply telling the truth. It means living consistently with God's principles. It is making decisions based on honesty, justice, and love. It's resisting the temptation to conform to the world's standards when they conflict with divine principles. The combination of God's mercy and His truth has a transformative power in our lives. When we keep God's mercy before us, we become more aware of His grace and compassion, which drives us to treat others with the same grace. At the same time, when we commit ourselves to walk in His truth, we become people of integrity, who can be trusted and who act righteously in all things. This balance between mercy and truth defines a well-lived life, making us people who not only speak of love and justice but embody them in every interaction and decision. In doing so, we distinguish ourselves in a world that often values expediency over truth and self-preservation over compassion. How can we apply this teaching in our daily lives? First, it is important to keep God's mercy before our eyes. This means taking time to reflect on His love and grace, remembering how His mercy has sustained us in times of difficulty and guided us in times of uncertainty. Allow this reminder to influence how we treat others, being more patient, understanding, and forgiving. Second, walking in His truth involves evaluating our actions and decisions in light of divine truth. Ask yourself, am I acting with integrity? Do my decisions reflect God's justice and truth? It's a call to be honest, not compromising our values for convenience, and to live in a way that honors God in all areas of our lives. Living with God's ever-present mercy and walking in His truth leads us to a life of wholeness and gives us a deep sense of purpose. We become people who not only seek our own well-being but also work for the well-being of others. This lifestyle sets us apart and allows us to be a reflection of God's love and justice in a world that desperately needs them. By living in this way, we find ourselves not only fulfilling what God expects of us, but also experiencing a peace and satisfaction that comes from knowing we are walking on the right path, the way of truth and mercy. Psalm 26:3 is more than a verse to memorize. It is a guide to living a life that honors God. Whenever you are faced with a difficult decision or challenge, remember these words. For your mercy is before my eyes, and I walk in your truth. Let this verse be a constant reminder of how we are to live with integrity and with God's love as our guide. Psalm 26:3 invites us to live a life marked by God's mercy and truth. It teaches us that the key to living with integrity in a world full of challenges is to keep God's goodness ever present and commit ourselves to walk in His truth. We live in a world that often seems to be in chaos. News, personal problems, financial worries, and uncertainties about the future can make peace seem unattainable. Yet, in the midst of this whirlwind, we find a verse in Scripture that offers a powerful and transformative solution. Isaiah 26:3. This verse says, "You will keep in perfect peace the one whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you." In these few words is contained a profound teaching on how we can find and maintain lasting peace, even when the circumstances around us are turbulent. The verse begins with a promise: "You will keep in perfect peace." This is not just any peace, but a perfect, complete peace that only God can bestow. This peace does not depend on our external circumstances, but on the fact that it comes from a divine source that is constant and secure. Even in the midst of adversity, imagine having a peace that is unaffected by life's difficulties, a peace that endures even when the world around you is in chaos. This is the peace that God promises to those who trust in Him, a peace that is not fleeting or superficial, but deep and lasting. The key to receiving this peace, according to the verse, is in our thoughts. The one whose mind is stayed on you. This means that the perfect peace of God is the result of a mind focused and steadfast on Him. But what does it mean to persevere in our thoughts on God? To persevere means to keep our thoughts so centered on God, on His goodness, His power, and His love for us. It is a conscious effort not to let the worries, fears, and distractions of life divert our attention from the truth of who God is and what He can do. This mental focus is not something that happens automatically. It requires discipline and decision. It requires that instead of letting our minds be filled with anxiety or fear, we intentionally fix our thoughts on God's truth and promises. When we do this, we begin to experience the peace that He promises. The reason why we can keep our minds fixed on God and therefore experience His peace is because we trust in Him. Trust in God is the foundation of this peace. When we trust God, we believe that He is in control, that He is good, and that His will for our lives is perfect. Trust in God frees us from the need to control every aspect of our lives, which is often the root of our anxiety. It allows us to rest, knowing that God is at work, even when we cannot see the immediate results. This confidence transforms our perspective, allowing us to see our circumstances through the eyes of faith rather than fear. How can we apply this teaching in our daily lives? First, we must cultivate the practice of focusing our minds on God. This can be done through prayer, meditation on the Scriptures, and actively recalling God's promises throughout the day. Whenever you feel your mind overwhelmed by worries, take a moment to redirect your thoughts to God. Remember His goodness, His faithfulness, and His control over every situation. Second, practice active trust in God. This means that instead of trying to figure everything out on your own, you choose to trust that God is in control. This does not mean being passive, but rather making decisions based on faith, not fear. Trust that God is at work in your life, even when you don't see immediate results. As we begin to apply these principles, we will begin to experience the perfect peace that God promises. This peace not only benefits us, but it also impacts those around us. A person who lives in peace, who is not shaken by external circumstances, is a powerful testimony of faith in God. Others will see this peace in you and be drawn to the same God who is the source of that tranquility. The Bible offers us a powerful promise through Jeremiah 17:7-8. A verse that invites us to trust God and discover the incredible power that comes from that trust. This verse says, "Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, and whose trust is in Him. He will be like a tree planted by the water, that spreads out its roots by the stream, and will not fear when heat comes, but its leaves will be green, and in the year of drought it will not be anxious, nor will it cease from yielding fruit." These words not only offer us comfort, but they also teach us how to live a full life, even in the midst of adversity. The verse begins with a statement of blessing. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, and whose trust is in Him. Trust in God is not just an act of faith, but the foundation on which we build our lives. When we trust in God, we recognize that He is our source of strength and guidance, and we can rely on His wisdom, love, and power. But this trust goes beyond words. It is an act of trust that influences our decisions, reactions to difficulties, and how we see the world. It is full of blessings and the assurance of His presence. This verse is a promise that, although life can be challenging, we do not have to walk alone or in fear. Gratitude is more than an action, it is an attitude that transforms life. Not only does it help you see blessings, it also connects you more deeply with God and with the people around you. It is a powerful detoxifier for our minds, eliminating negativity, complaining, and overthinking. And best of all, it is within everyone's reach. You don't need a perfect life to be thankful, you just need a heart willing to see God's hand in every big or small detail. Because when you are thankful, you don't just change your focus, you change your life. You have felt so tired that not even sleeping seems enough. That exhaustion that is not only physical but mental and emotional. Sometimes it seems that our mind doesn't stop, full of worries. What if this happens? Or how am I going to solve that? But God, in His infinite goodness, offers us something deeper than simple physical rest. He invites us to a rest for the soul, a place where we can let go of our burdens and find true peace. Psalm 23:2 describes it so tenderly. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. That image of the Good Shepherd is so comforting, don't you think? A shepherd who not only takes care of his sheep, but also guides them, feeds them, and protects them. That's how God is with us. He leads us to those green pastures, places where our needs are met, where there is abundance and provision. But it's not only about material needs. These pastures represent something much greater, the peace we need in the midst of chaos. It is the place where our minds can rest, where overthinking loses its power because we know that our shepherd is in charge. And then come those still waters. You can imagine it. A calm river with no strong currents, a place where everything feels peaceful. It's the exact opposite of the agitation of our minds when we are full of worry. These waters are a reminder that God does not want us to live in constant stress. He calls us to a place of stillness where we can take a deep breath, let go of our anxieties, and just be in His presence. The beautiful thing about this passage is that God doesn't just take us to these resting places, He shepherds us. That means we're not alone in the process. He's with us, guiding us, taking care of us, making sure we don't get sidetracked even when our lives seem full of challenges. God is present, taking us by the hand to that rest that our souls need. And it is not a temporary or superficial rest. It is a deep rest that renews our strength and calms our minds. But what happens when we try to find rest in things that cannot give it to us? Sometimes we seek refuge in entertainment, excessive work, or habits that only offer us momentary relief. It's like trying to quench our thirst with salt water. It doesn't work. These false refuges cannot satisfy our need. Only in God do we find true rest, because only He can reach the most wounded and tired parts of our being. To find that rest in God, you don't need to do anything complicated. It's as simple as stopping for a moment, closing your eyes, and talking to Him. Tell Him how you feel, what cares overwhelm you, and read His Word. Let those promises of peace and care fill your mind. Go for a walk and enjoy His creation. Sometimes nature reminds us of how great and present our God is. Practice silence, even if it's for just a few minutes a day. In a world full of noise, those moments of stillness can be a balm for the soul. And here's the secret. Rest in God is directly related to our trust in Him. When we trust that He is in control, we can let go of our worries. We can say, "Lord, I don't understand everything, but I trust that You do. So I leave this in Your hands." That trust frees us from overthinking and gives us the peace we need so much. This rest is not inactivity. It doesn't mean we stop doing what we should do. On the contrary, it's a rest that strengthens us, that prepares us to face the challenges of life with a new perspective and renewed energy. It's like a refuge where we recharge our strength to move forward. When we rest in God, something incredible happens. Our minds detoxify. It's as if His peace cleanses that constant flow of anxious thoughts, those doubts, and what will happen worries. We find clarity, calm, and the certainty that we are not alone. Because when we are with our Good Shepherd, we know that we lack nothing. So, if you feel exhausted, if your mind doesn't stop, I invite you to seek that rest in God. Let Him take you to those green pastures, to those still waters. Talk to Him, trust Him, and allow His peace to fill every corner of your soul. Because in His presence, there is always rest. There is always hope. There is always rest for the tired soul. You have asked yourself, if everything you're living has a purpose. It's easy to feel lost when faced with situations that don't seem to make sense, when pain, uncertainty, or failure strikes us. But God, through His Word, gives us a promise that changes our perspective. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. And take note of how it begins. We know. It doesn't say, we hope or we think. It's not a guess. It is a certainty, a conviction based on God's faithful character. This promise is not for everyone, but for those who love God. And loving God is not only a feeling, it is reflected in our decisions, in our surrender, and in our obedience to His Word. It is living with the confidence that He is in control, even when we don't understand what is going on. It is a love that recognizes that our life does not belong to us, but is in the hands of a God who calls us according to His purpose. And here's where we have the hardest time understanding all things. He doesn't say some things or only the good things, but all things. That includes the things we don't understand, the things that hurt us, the things we would like to avoid. This does not mean that everything that happens to us is good in itself. There are things that are wrong, unjust, and difficult. But God, in His wisdom and sovereignty, can take even those circumstances and use them to produce something good in our lives. He is like an artist who uses dark colors to create a picture full of light. He sees the whole picture, while we only see a part of it. Think of Joseph, the young man sold into slavery by his own brothers. From our human perspective, that was a tragedy. He was betrayed, imprisoned, and unjustly forgotten for years, but when we look at the whole story, we see how God used all that to save an entire nation and reconcile a family. Joseph said it better than anyone else. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." That's how God's providence works. He takes what seems broken and turns it into something beautiful. Trusting in divine providence means letting go of control. How many times do we try to figure it all out ourselves, believing that if we plan enough or worry enough, things will turn out the way we want? But the truth is, we cannot control everything. The anxiety we feel often comes from trying to do what only God can do. And when we let go of that control, when we say, "Lord, I trust that you know what you are doing," we find a peace that the world cannot offer. It is that peace that surpasses all understanding because it does not depend on our circumstances, but on knowing that we are in the hands of a God who never makes a mistake. This doesn't mean we understand everything right away. There are things that will only make sense when we are with Him in eternity. But in the meantime, we can trust that His plan is good even when we don't see it. His purpose is eternal. And what we experience here will work together for the good of those who love Him, is only a small part of what He has prepared for us in the midst of trials. Praying becomes one of our most powerful weapons. Prayer connects us with God, reminds us that we are not alone, and helps us to release our burdens. Sometimes our prayers will not change our immediate circumstances, but they will change our perspective. They allow us to see that God is at work even when we don't feel it. When we trust in divine providence, we're placing our lives in safe hands. We're saying, "Lord, I don't know what's coming next, but I know you do." And that trust frees us from overthinking what will happen, giving us the freedom to live in the present with purpose. knowing that God is already working on our future. Don't leave words to chance. Think about how you can use your voice to build up and not tear down. This may require a shift in the way you communicate daily. Make kindness an integral part of your life. Words that come from a kind heart have a much deeper and longer-lasting impact. Don't underestimate the power of your words. In a world where we all face our own inner struggles, being the person who offers a kind word can make all the difference. It can be the light in someone's darkness, the breath in the midst of the storm, the smile that brightens a gray day. Proverbs 12:25 reminds us that although anxiety and worry are inevitable in life, so too is the power we have to influence the well-being of others through our words. We are glad that you are continuing to watch this video and pray that God will speak to you through the next verse. If you have not yet subscribed, we thank you for doing so. Psalm 37:5 says, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act." Though simple, this phrase carries a profound message that has the power to transform how we live. It calls us to relinquish control, trust in God, and rest in the certainty that He will take care of us. The first part of the verse urges us to commit our way to the Lord. The word commit implies more than just asking for help. It means placing something valuable in the hands of someone we trust to care for it. In this case, the valuable thing is our life, our plans, our dreams, and our worries. When we commit our way to the Lord, we are saying, "God, I give you my decisions, my steps, my worries. I trust that you know what is best for me, even when I don't understand it." This act of surrender is liberating. It removes the burden of feeling that everything depends on us and allows us to rest in the assurance that God is in control. The next part of the verse is a call to trust. Trust in Him. Trust in God is not simply believing that He exists, but having the certainty that He is faithful and that His plans for us are good. This trust is active. It's a faith that moves us to live with hope, knowing that even if we can't see the full picture, God does. Trust means that even when things don't go as expected, we still believe that God has a purpose. It is the assurance that, though we may face difficulties, we are not alone, and that in His time, God will act on our behalf. The verse concludes with a powerful promise, "And He will act." It is a reminder that God not only hears our prayers, but also moves on our behalf. Sometimes, His answer may not be immediate or what we expect, but we can trust that God is always working in our lives, opening doors, closing others, and leading us on the best path. How can we apply this teaching in our daily lives? Begin by assessing the areas of your life that cause worry or stress. These may include decisions about your career, relationships, or even your health. Take some time to pray and entrust these areas to God. Tell Him, "Lord, I give you this. I trust that you will do what is best for me." Then, live with the confidence that God is in control. This doesn't mean sitting idly by, but acting with the assurance that God is leading you. If you encounter obstacles, remind yourself of the promise, "And He will act." Keep the faith, knowing that even if you don't see the outcome yet, God is working on your behalf. By learning to commit your way to God and trust Him, you will experience a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. This peace comes from knowing that you don't need to have everything figured out because God already does. Living with this confidence allows you to enjoy the present without the burden of anxiety about the future. This kind of life not only benefits you, but it also influences those around you who see your peace and confidence. Others may feel inspired to trust God as well. Your life can become a living testimony of God's faithfulness. Psalm 37:5 is more than a verse to memorize, it is a truth to live by. Whenever you are faced with difficult decisions or uncertain times, remember these words. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. This constant reminder will help you maintain peace, hope, and trust in God no matter the circumstances. In one of the most well-known Psalms in the Bible, we find a message that offers comfort and strength in the midst of difficult circumstances. Psalm 23:4 says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." These words, though brief, contain a powerful lesson that can change the way we face life's darkest challenges. The psalmist, David, does not deny the reality of dark valleys. We all go through difficult times that can seem bleak and discouraging. These valleys of the shadow of death can represent any situation that causes fear, such as the loss of a loved one, serious illness, financial difficulties, or personal crises. What's important here is recognizing that these valleys are part of life. We can't always avoid them, but how we respond to them can make all the difference. David shows us that even as we walk through these valleys, we don't need to fear. The heart of the verse lies in this powerful statement: "I will fear no evil." How is it possible not to fear when surrounded by darkness? The key is in the trust that David has in God. It's not about ignoring the danger or pretending fear doesn't exist. It's about choosing to trust that no matter what happens, God is with us. This is a decision that we can all make when confronted with fear. We can choose trust. This trust isn't in our own strength, but in the constant and protective presence of God. Knowing that He is with us gives us the courage to move forward, even when the road is difficult. The reason David is not afraid, even in the darkest valley, is clear. "For you are with me." God's presence changes everything. We are not alone in our struggles. God walks by our side, guiding us, protecting us, and giving us the strength we need to continue. This truth is deeply comforting. At times, loneliness can amplify fear, but remembering that God is with us assures us that no matter how dark the valley may seem, we are not alone. His presence is a constant source of comfort and hope. The verse continues, "Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." In shepherd culture, the rod and staff were essential tools. The rod was used to protect the flock from dangers, while the staff was used to guide and direct the sheep. These images remind us that God is not only with us, but also protects and leads us. His rod defends us from dangers we cannot see, and His staff guides us on the right path, even when we don't know where to go. This gives us comfort and strength, allowing us to move forward with the confidence that God is watching over us at all times. How can we apply this teaching in our daily lives? First, it's crucial to recognize that dark valleys are an inevitable part of life. When facing these moments, instead of being overwhelmed by fear, we can remember this verse and choose to trust God. Whenever you feel darkness surrounding you, pause and recite this verse. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Let these words serve as a constant reminder of God's presence and protection. Also, find moments to pray and ask God to show you His rod and staff, that is, His protection and guidance in the midst of your challenges. Trust that He will lead you on the right path and protect you from dangers, even those you cannot see. By living with the confidence that God is with us, we begin to experience a peace that transcends circumstances. This peace allows us to walk without fear, even in the darkest of times. Living in this way not only benefits us, but it can also be a powerful witness to those around us. By seeing our trust in God, others may be inspired to seek His presence in their own struggles. Psalm 23:4 is more than just a verse to memorize. It's a truth to live by. Every time you face a challenge, remember these words and let them guide you. This verse is a promise that although life may be difficult, we don't have to walk alone or in fear. God is with us, and with Him we can face anything. Psalm 26:3 says, "For your steadfast love is before my eyes, and I walk in your faithfulness." Although brief, this passage provides us with a profound teaching about how to live authentically and justly in the midst of a complex world. The psalmist begins by saying, Your mercy is before my eyes. This is a powerful reminder of God's boundless goodness.